Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy Vice Nodge, and today we are doing another What If video. Today's is what if Courtney didn't rejoin Total Drama. So to make this work, I'm just going to assume her lawsuit was a bust and it ended up not succeeding in getting her put back into the game. And we're going to move on from the episode that she rejoins in, which is called Oceans 8 or 9. So I guess it will just be 8 now because no one rejoins. And we'll see how things play out from there. I'll be using in-universe logic to try and determine it with facts rather than just picking who I like. So anyway, without further delay, let's get into this. So the first half of the episode is unchanged until they reach the bank teller, who's usually Courtney, but that's now just going to be Chef, I assume. Considering how bad the grips were with Courtney on their team, and now that she's gone and she was about the only thing holding them together in this challenge, I think the grips would only be worse, so it's pretty easy for me to determine that the gaffers would win this challenge. I know Lindsay and Beth had started leaving Justin's corner at this point, but when you watch this episode and you see just how bad Owen was in this challenge with his mental state, like he was in a trance, he was chasing people thinking they were food, he destroyed the team's wheels for their go-kart, and ultimately I don't think, even if they had turned on Justin, it would make sense for them to vote anyone but Owen after that poor display. Episode 14 is a non-elimination, so we can skip that. I just put the non-eliminations there still just so that all bases are covered. So this is a big one. The cast now do not find out about Lashawna's trash talking because there's no PDA to spoil all of that, so Lashawna is still just well liked amongst everyone. I'd say the first two challenges are unchanged, with Harold and Beth winning their sports movie challenge. Now that the grips are a player down, I assume one of them will just volunteer for the final round. This means now Justin's matched up against Duncan for the fight though. I think considering how image conscious he is, Justin would be a very defensive fighter and would almost certainly lose to Duncan, who is definitely the more experienced considering his criminal record and generally what he seems to have got up to in life compared to Justin's life experience. Justin strikes me as someone who wouldn't know how to fight despite his big physique. Considering how good he was at basketball in the original challenge, I assume Justin would probably still volunteer since I expect he'd probably be better than Lindsay and Beth, and he would still lose to Lashawna in the same fashion because he was gloating a bit and then Lashawna throws the ball at him and that gets her the win for that challenge. The gaffers win, the grips lose, and with 2 out of 3 of the grips being Lindsay and Beth, I am concerned for the third person. It seems pretty likely to me that now that Justin has lost his lady killing mojo, he's going home here. Alright, time to say goodbye to these teams. Goodbye gaffers, and goodbye grips. Alright, merge time. Well, we can skip the actual merge day challenge because dial-in for merge is a non-elimination round. Alright, this is the superhero challenge. We already know how everyone in this current cast does at this challenge except for Heather, and while I think she'd be able to make a decent costume, I don't think she'd be able to match Harold's level of enthusiasm for the whole challenge, which I think, now that there's no Courtney, would secure Harold the win for this challenge. And considering that everyone here has a bit of beef with Heather historically, Lindsay and Beth from the alliance in Ireland that went horribly wrong, Lashawna's always disliked her and Harold would vote with Lashawna. No matter what Duncan and Heather do, even though I probably think Duncan will vote for Heather as well, there's no way Heather survives this challenge. Chris is going to want Lindsay to be the princess for the merch sales, because in this episode they're really determined to sell merch in universe, so they're not going to want Harold dressed as a princess because I don't think they would expect that to sell super well, even though I would buy that personally. I think Duncan and Harold finish the bridge crossing section, Beth still falls, we know how those 3 do, and I expect Lashawna would probably headbutt Chef like Justin did originally. I believe Harold would now come up with the same plan on how to take down the animatronic dragon, but now, instead of having Justin to use, he wouldn't want Lashawna to provoke him, so Harold's going to provoke Duncan by himself. If I was Harold, I'd personally bring up about how he cheated Courtney out last season, because I think that would get a rise out of Duncan. So Duncan's chasing Harold, Harold stops, Duncan stops, and the animatronic dragon trips over Duncan. Harold and Lashawna then find where you need to stab into the dragon to get the win. Harold lets Lashawna do it because I think he would just give her the win. And when it comes to the sword fight between Lindsay and Lashawna, I think Lashawna's definitely gonna beat Lindsay. She's a lot stronger and I don't see a way Lindsay would beat Lashawna in a sword fight. Lashawna wouldn't want to because she likes Lindsay and they've been seen to get on well in the past, and again in World Tour they get on well. So it'll be reluctantly, but Lashawna wins this challenge. Duncan knows he's in a bit of trouble here, so he makes a last-ditch effort to get Lindsay and Beth to vote for Harold. However, I think Lashawna and Harold would realise this alliance isn't working either, and ultimately would get them to vote Duncan with them instead. I think Lindsay and Beth would vote Duncan as they're much friendlier with Lashawna than they are Duncan, and I think that's how those two vote. They vote generally for who they like and dislike, so they would rather make Lashawna happy than Duncan. Episode 20 is a skippable reward challenge. Alright, so Chris still brings back Owen and uses the justification of him suing over breaking his jaw, and that he's the host and can just do what he wants. Lindsay's the only one here I think that would pose for the paparazzi during the first challenge, so she gets the time bonus. Not that it matters, because we know how everyone except Lashawna here does at this challenge originally. They're all quite bad at breaking things. And do I think Lashawna would do better than all the other people here? Yes, I think Lashawna now wins destroying the hotel room and gets immunity. I think Lindsay and Beth are going to target Harold because I think they like Owen more than Harold. I think Lashawna and Harold would counter this by targeting Beth because they want Owen to vote with them, and I think they would expect Owen to like Lindsay more because they were together a lot longer on Island and seem to get on a bit better than Owen and Beth do. Now, it's a close one, this, because it's a bit tricky to figure out exactly who Owen would want to side with, but using the logic that Owen and Harold have never been teammates, and this is the first challenge where they've both been in the same merged cast, because in Ireland Harold didn't make the merge, how well do they really know each other? Basing it on that, I'm going to have to assume Owen would side with Lindsay and Beth in voting Harold, rather than voting Beth with Lashawna and Harold. So, if that sounded rambly and confusing, Beth, Lindsay and Owen are voting for Harold. There you go. Episode 22 is another skippable non-elimination round. Owen would still break the zero gravity jet, and I think Lashawna's probably the only one strong enough and also abrasive enough to actually just go up to Owen and grab him by herself. I think Beth could probably help, but I think it would be Lashawna who is definitely the mastermind behind that move now. So Lashawna gets to pick the turn order, and I think because she's fairly logical, the idea of her going last would make sense to her, because that makes sense in most challenges. You get to see everyone else mess it up and learn from their mistakes. But now, the issue is, obviously it's the vomit comet, and she doesn't know that, so she's going to pick the order, I believe, Owen, Lindsay, Beth, Lashawna. Alright, now they're in order of turns, so that'll make it a bit easier for you lot to visualise. So Owen going first. We know Owen's bad at this challenge, and we also know he farts in it because he was eating a lot of chili. I don't expect Lindsay to get in and definitely vomit. We know Beth is brave enough to get in with vomit, so I think Beth would still get in. Disgustingly, I don't like watching this scene very much, but she would get in and do very well with the vomit. Do I think Lashawna would get in with the vomit? I think she would contemplate it, but I don't think she would. Anyway, to the voting process, Beth has immunity. Lashawna knows that Lindsay and Beth are basically inseparable, and she knows if she gets them on side to vote Owen, she can secure her place for another week. She does this, and all three girls vote for Owen. And that's because they like Lashawna more. I think Lashawna can be quite persuasive. Alright, time to let you guys in on a little secret. This episode has taken me longer than any other episode to write the script for, and it's only for one seemingly minor thing. The animal buddies. Trying to accurately figure out who would pick what animal has been painfully difficult. Let me know in the comments what you think of the pairs I have produced here. It would be easy to say Beth picks the raccoon, but she didn't really pick it. She got stuck with it last time out. So, because she's quite a passive person, a bit more timid than everyone else, I think she would let everyone else pick first. So, if one of Lashawna or Lindsay were to pick the raccoon, Beth would have to just settle for something else. For me personally, I think the most appealing options are the chameleon and the raccoon, mainly because of their size. Even if they're not cooperating, you could probably grab them and force them to go with you. So I think Lashawna, knowing that Lindsay and Beth are tight, would have to hurry to pick her animal because she needs every advantage she can get, because she knows if she loses, she's probably going home. So I think Lashawna would pick the raccoon over the chameleon out of fears that the chameleon would change its pigments and be hard to find. I think Lindsay would go next and pick the chameleon, probably just to get it to change into being pretty colours and looking cute with it. I could see that being a plot arc for Lindsay in this episode, just trying to bond with it and get it to turn into like the colour of her hair or the colour of her outfit or something. I think Beth would be stuck with the bear just out of formality, because I don't understand why anyone would pick the shark willingly. I don't get why Courtney wanted the shark originally. That's something that's never made much sense to me. I've never got the appeal of picking a shark for this challenge. But whatever. The main thing this comes down to is who gets back first. Now that Beth doesn't have the raccoon to lead her and we know how quick she was to start panicking in the original episode, I think her and the bear would not do very well now. I also think it's reasonable to assume that Lindsay and Beth would travel together. So I expect Lindsay and Beth to both be struggling with the chameleon and the bear in the middle of nowhere, confused and lost, not really getting anywhere. While I don't think Lashawna would build a very good relationship with the raccoon in the same way Beth did, because Beth sort of became the raccoon's pet and I don't think Lashawna would fill that role. I think Lashawna's abrasiveness and would probably just grab it and walk around with it. And we've seen how easily frustrated she gets with wild animals in the island challenge where she had to try and capture the frog. But out of everybody, I would back Lashawna to now get back first with the raccoon, even if she doesn't take the nice route Beth did. Beth and Lindsay are very similar people, so it's kind of tricky for Lashawna to decide who she wants to face in the final two. And I would have to assume that she would eliminate Beth, because Beth is the smarter of the two, and in this timeline, Beth has probably just about been a bit better than Lindsay in the challenges. So assuming the final challenge, from her perspective, she'll just assume that it's going to be a challenge. She'd probably rather face Lindsay. But this one's very close and really could have been a decision that went either way. So let me know in the comments what you think. Lashawna would do better than Lindsay in the bulk of the race because they'd both know the questions about the people they were fairly close with. So Lashawna would get like the Harold question right. Lindsay would probably get the Justin question right after following him for such a large chunk of the season. But what this comes down to for me is Lashawna probably knows more about people and is a bit better at challenges. But the final question now will be the disaster movie challenge, and the question will be about Beth. So I think Lindsay would know it and Lashawna might not, because Lashawna and Beth aren't ridiculously close or anything. But what I think would happen is Lashawna would be struggling through the disaster movie challenge for a while, allowing Lindsay to catch up. As she finishes, Lindsay's at the zip line, so they both get there at the same time, and tie going into the last episode. The questions are asked like normal, except Courtney doesn't get to vote. She didn't get to ask a question originally anyway, but she doesn't even get a vote now. In the original episode, there's only shown to be 7 votes in the jar, which I find bizarre, but I found a bit of logic for that. Owen is seen farting in the confessional where they are doing the voting, and then the next few people are seen struggling with the smell and collapsing from it. So I have to assume that that's why there's votes missing. I assume people went in, got hit with that horrible smell and didn't vote and left. So what I figured would happen for the alternate endings is that different people are going in after Owen. So when Lindsay wins, people that would have voted for Lashawna go in after Owen. And when Lashawna wins, people who would have voted for Lindsay go in after her. So they both get winning endings based on who Owen's fart knocks out. So this is how I think Total Drama Action would go if Courtney didn't rejoin. Let me know in the comments what you think. Be sure to like, subscribe, and do all of that lovely stuff. And I will throw up the comments of people who were requesting this video now. Thank you so much for that. And until next time, this has been your boy Vice Nodge. See ya.